Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ number 84, the knife series, where I answer all of your questions, whether they're sharp or dull. And this week, amongst our topics, we're talking about some hard use folding knives. We're going to talk about Sgian Dubhs, fun subject, and tackle one of the thorny problems, quote unquote problems, with D2 tool steel. Is it really hard to sharpen, or is it all just a bunch of nonsense? Let's get into it. Well, as you can hear, I'm still struggling with my voice a little bit, but reason being, my kid just started daycare, aka the Great Incubator. It's bringing home a lot of fun things to mom and dad to experience with her as a result. Parents out there with the youngins who've gone through the same thing, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, if you're new to this series, here's what we do. You folks are going to leave your questions down in the comments section below this video, and I'm going to go through and pick out a few good ones for a future episode. So that's what you got to do if you want a shot at being featured next time around. First question today comes from Bill B. I'm sure you've covered this before, but my D2 blades never seem to get really sharp. I have no problem with my S30 or S35. Does D2 just take a lot longer, or is it just never shaving sharp? Long story short is, well, we can sum this up perfectly with a oft-repeated quote. Problem is, I can't remember the original knife maker who said this. I couldn't even find the info when I looked for it online. But the adage with D2 goes, it takes a lousy edge and holds it forever. So in one respect, yeah, it almost doesn't quite get as sharp as other stuff. Maybe not. But D2 definitely has a reputation as being difficult to sharpen. I'm just holding a knife here that happens to have D2 tool steel. This is the Bestech, I forget the name, Paladin. Really cool looking design. The thing with D2 that gives it its characteristics, both positive and negative depending how you look at it, is it has really big, large, hard carbides in the steel matrix. And that's what gives it its long edge retention, but that's also what makes it harder to sharpen. In my younger days, I definitely experienced, the level of sharpening it took me to get D2 as sharp as something like S30V, for an example. I thought, there's no point for me to have a D2 tool steel blade because I can get stainlessness, I can get more toughness with the S30V, and, a much easier time to sharpen the blade. But that was at a time when I was getting going in the knife world where D2 and S30V knives were kind of similarly priced in a way. Nowadays, when you can get D2 on very affordable folders, I mean, you think of like the Dozier D2 folder that's like 30 some bucks. This knife right here from Bestech, $52, and a ton of $50 D2 flippers out there nowadays. The edge retention you're getting at that price range, it flips the script on whether I thought D2 was worth it or not. Because when it was the same price as a powder steel, take the powder steel every day of the week in my mind. Nowadays, it's like D2 has found a second life, so to speak, which is pretty cool. But those large carbides, they are going to make it a little harder to sharpen. Nowadays, I don't have too much trouble with it. It might be, as you get more comfortable with your sharpening methods and materials, you'll start to see that result as well. The other thing the large carbides hinder, I should say, and I don't know what angle you're sharpening, but if you're sharpening the blade at a very acute angle, those large carbides can actually tear out. You can actually make the blade chippier when you do that. Stick with something, around 20 degrees per side. It's good, solid measurement. Yeah, you might be able to go thinner, but the thinner you go, the more brittle that edge is going to become, even more so than some other steels due to what D2 is, basically. I think that's all the points I wanted to make. D2 is great, especially at the lower prices nowadays. It has more of a leg to stand on. But you might just need a little bit more practice. If anyone knows that quote, who it initially came from, please let me know down in the comments because I've been trying to track it down. It's one of those things that if you've been into knives long enough, you're going to hear it over and over and over. It's almost like the passed on information at this point. So someone had to have said it first, though.
It's just public domain now.
It's public domain. I don't think that's quite how this works, but somebody let me know. Next question. Ian's Clone. I really like the CRKT Minimalist's style, but one thing about it stays my hand, the lack of a sharpening choil. Question for DCA or other knife nuts, is it terribly difficult to create one? And what would be the best tool for the job? Thanks in advance. So yeah, no sharpening choil on this particular knife. There are, before I get into how to create one on it, which is pretty easy, there are some reasons you may or may not want such a feature. The Paladin we just looked at has a very exaggerated sharpening choil, which is going to kind of further exaggerate my point here. If you're cutting through something, especially something like plastic bags, rope even, cloth, if you get past the back of the edge and it gets caught up inside that sharpening choil, you're kind of going to arrest the motion of your cut. It's going to be hard to pull it back out because you don't have a sharp edge there to deal with that material. If you don't have a sharpening choil, if you've just got shoulder, it's less likely, not impossible, but less likely to slip off the edge. So there could be a reason you want both. The sharpening choil, of course, makes it a little easier to sharpen, hence the name. Easy way to add one, if you've got a rotary tool like a Dremel, they make these little filing bits with diamond-coated edges, little spindly rods basically with diamond-coated ends. Real easy to just get in there and eat away a small sharpening choil. Go slow, keep the blade cool, don't go nuts and just get angry with it, because then you're gonna get the blade hot. You don't wanna ruin the temper of the edge, of course. But that's a super easy way to do it. Round diamond files, hand tools could also do the same job, and you're gonna run less risk of messing it up that way. But super easy to add one on something like that if you want, especially, well, this is this KnifeCenter exclusive for 30 bucks. Does have a D2 blade, so the abrasion resistance is going to be higher on this than some of the stainless versions of the minimalist. So your mileage, of course, may vary depending on which knife you've got. Next question, Tim Olson. I wear a kilt every day, and I'm looking for a Sgian Dubh that's not a Sgian Dubh. So a fixed blade that's about the same size, but more EDC in nature. It's worn tucked into a kilt hose as an over-the-calf sock, so ideally it's light, thin, and preferably paired with a leather sheath. I'm not looking for jewelry, so something not too flashy, but pretty enough. Thanks in advance. Cool, so for those of you who don't know what a Sgian Dubh is, it's a traditional Scottish implement. Nowadays, at least, it's worn primarily as a decorative item. But you know, there's a distinct look to these nowadays. Unfortunately, we don't have any really good examples in inventory of a traditional Sgian Dubh, but I have some here that could be a little more EDC appropriate. First one that I've thought about before as a kind of modern Sgian Dubh is the Guardian 3 from Bradford Knives. 144 bucks for this one, with an M390 blade, about 3.5 inches long, sturdy, robust, high flat grind, decent compromise between your slicing characteristics and a little bit more strength, and about a 3.5 finger grip on the handle itself, just enough to effectively wield it. Really cool knives. The sheath system, however, might not quite do the trick for wearing it traditional style over the calf, because you have a simple belt loop here. If you wanted to go the custom route, you could certainly use this knife as the platform for what you're going through. But for what you're going for. But I do have another option. First, I'll show you the sheath. There you go. It's a flat leather affair with stitching and some holes on the side, and you could use these holes to attach something like an ulti clip or other type of retention device that'll allow you to carry it around your calf or with your sock. Hopefully you have a better idea of what kind of hardware that's going to take, because I don't have anything on the shelf that's expressly created for that per se, but an ulti clip could be added onto that pretty easily. And this sheath comes with a K-bar. This is the 5101 Snody Boss. Really cool little knife. 107 or so right now. 3.5 inch blade again, drop point. Kind of Sgian Dubh-esque in the actual shape of the blade. Handle, of course, goes a little bit away from the traditional shapes. Zytel handles, S35 VN steel, chisel ground, interestingly enough, which is a bit more uncommon these days on this style of knife. And it's probably why a lot of folks have shied away from it, because it's a little bit unconventional in that respect, but it's kind of a shame because it is a really nice little knife. Holds in the hand quite nicely, great utilitarian shape, decently lightweight. I mean, we're talking about 2.7 ounces for the knife, so not a featherweight, but shouldn't weigh down too far in any case. And then there it is in the sheath. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. And if some of you folks know another, like a modern Sgian Dubh or a like EDC, or a more EDC centric Sgian Dubh replacement, let us know in the comments, and let this fella know in the comments. I'm not sure why I called you fella. That's a little dismissive.
Kilt's an assumption.
Well, he said he was wearing a kilt.
Yeah. Assumed to be a fella.
Well, his name is Tim. Yeah. But fella's kind of like, little guy. I don't know. Maybe he's not a little guy. This is probably going in, isn't it?
This is going definitely going in.
Sorry, folks. Next question's from Michael. DCA, what is your favorite hard use folder? I need something to hold up well at work. All I've found as far as the best bang for your buck is cold steel. Well, you're on the right track. If you're talking about a hard use folder, best bang for the buck, immediately I'm going to tell you cold steel as well. And since we're talking my favorites, I'm going to show this right here, the AD10. This is one of my favorites, and it's now even better bang for your buck with the AD10 Lite that has recently hit our shelves. $93 for this rather than G10 and S35 VN. You've got an injection molded handle and AUS 10 blade steel. Still plenty thick. You've still got that robust blade profile overall. The handles feel, honestly, just as fine as the G10 versions. It's not gonna be quote unquote as premium, but it doesn't feel cheap and plasticky at all. At least not to me. I think it feels phenomenal. Part of the thing that goes into a good hard use folder for me also is that hand comfort, because if you're gonna use it hard, you don't want it to be fighting against you, biting back, so to speak. Really cool knife, and the reason cold steel offers the best bang for your buck is right down to this right here. Another Andrew Demko thing, the Triad lock. Looks like a lock back, but you've got an extra stop pin and some adjusted geometries under the hood, so to speak, that make it lock up stronger, make it stronger in kind of odd pressure angles where pressure's moving in an opposite direction that might disengage a back lock. And it's also a design that's self-adjusting over time, so it's not going to get wobbly to nearly the same extent as a standard lockback will. Really cool. One could make the argument that the SR1 Lite is a better bang for your buck. Those things are 8CR steel, just over $50, like $60 almost. But you did say my favorites, and I like the better slicing geometry of the AD10 compared to the even thicker blade and shorter flat grind of the SR1 series, which I still like, but again, we're talking my favorites. As far as other favorites of mine, I'll actually show you some things that I have in my rotation that I really like. The new versions of the Benchmade Adamas with the crew wear blade. Excellent stuff. I dig the strength of the axis lock, and the crew wear is, of course, very tough stuff. You can do that with it. Super solid in the hand. Another Andrew Demko knife, the AD20S, is a knife that I reach for when I need a larger, heavier duty knife. And I went for the S as opposed to the full fat versions because, again, I still like the thinner blades a little bit. I like the slicier nature of this versus the thicker MG versions. Stuff like my Hinderer Jurassic, which we'll come back here to later in a minute. But you'll see those three knives are relatively unbattle scarred because honestly, I reach for my Sebenza when I need to get down and dirty a lot. I mean, you can see the miles I've put on this blade, even though the hollow grind on this knife should theoretically not be as tough as the stronger flat grinds of the thicker bladed knives that I just showed you. It's a solid, heavy duty, hardworking knife. It really is. And I have put some miles on this for sure. There you go. Those are some of my favorites anyway, but by far, this is certainly not an exhaustive list. I don't want to get into any argument as what is best, because what's best for me is what I like and what I enjoy. And these are some of those. Let me know your favorites down in the comments, folks, below. Now we're going to come to the lightning round. First question is from XF. Okay, so what was the only tie frame lock folder in your personal collection, Mr. DCA? He asks because several weeks ago I mentioned that I only have a single titanium frame lock flipper in my arsenal because it's not something I generally gravitate to. And one person got it right. I was going to award bonus points to anyone who got it. Patrick Harrison, you were the only one. If you're out there watching, there it is. It's my one titanium frame lock flipper. I have other titanium frame locks. I have other frame lock flippers, but only one titanium frame lock flipper. Next question from the lightning round, Ryan Walsh. So DCA, do you have any examples of the patina on those burnt orange canvas micarta scales? Yes, I do. I've mentioned that the burnt orange micarta on these Patina exclusives, for example, this Apache front flipper, will get redder as you use them, as the oils of your hand work in. There's one that has been handled a lot more than this one right here on top, which is fresh out of the box. And you can see it's got a very different character. It's darker, redder. I really like the broken in look of this material. When it comes right out of the box, it's a little redder, but it kind of just feels like a slightly more ruddy, natural canvas micarta. It's once you get some miles on it that it really takes on a life of its own, which is pretty cool. All right, now for our next segment, which is Measured Once, Cut Twice, where we take another stab at a previous question. And this time we're taking some feedback from last week's episode where some gentleman was looking for an outdoor knife that could be elegant enough and efficient enough to work in the kitchen as well. Several of you made the same suggestion, so I'm going to read one of them here with our good friend Jean-Baptiste Demetz, who is a repeat featured player, shall we say.
At least once.
How about the CJRB Silex for an elegant outdoorsy stainless that could go in the kitchen? Here we go. Here's the Silex. I think this is an awesome knife. And Russell from Artisan and CJRB, you know you're my boy. But I'm gonna have to contradict you a little bit here. When they first came out with this knife, they were really promoting it as an outdoor knife, and I gotta say it really doesn't speak to me in any sort of like outdoorsy fashion at all. I like this knife very much as a portable food prep knife. It would make a heck of a cardboard processor. I will give you that. I mean, it's got that aggressive Wharncliffe shape, but if I'm heading outdoors, this handle just feels way too anemic for wood carving specifically. That's kind of the like the heavier wood carving you're gonna do. The handle doesn't do it for me. The blade profile, yeah, you'll be able to get your work done, but it's not, again, not quite speaking to me as an outdoor blade in general. Fantastic little food prep knife though. And even though I was avoiding bolt-on scales for the elegant factor, this black G10 version of the knife definitely has a little bit of that elegance to it. But again, just to me, not quite an outdoor knife, which is why, even though it hit the price range, it hit that side of things, I did not mention that knife, even though it did cross my mind as I was looking for stuff. So thanks for everyone who made that suggestion. And now we come to our most serious question of the day, which comes from Paul Shireholtz. What is the best lightweight fixed blade for food prep and also to penetrate the thick fur of Sasquatch? There we go. Now we have found the perfect use for the Artisan Silex, which I guess I'm contradicting myself there. If you're going to be out encountering Sasquatch, you're going to be outdoors, so.
There's many things to do outdoors.
You mean
this is one of them.
This is to penetrate the thick fur of Sasquatch.
Yes.
There you go. Pokey pokey. All right, that is all we've got for today. Make sure to leave your questions below, including your most serious questions as well. I'm always having fun seeing what you folks come up with. If you want to get your hands on these knives, except for my personal ones, links will be in the description to send you over to KnifeCenter.com. And don't forget, we've got our Knife Rewards program. What that means is when you buy one of these knives today, you're going to be earning some free monies to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. And we're signing off. See you next time.